The Star Wars saga continues with a special limited engagement of The Empire Strikes Back, starting November 19th. The Empire Strikes Back, returning to your galaxy, November 19th.
The modern movie cliche is that a sequel should be darker, and you can blame that on The Empire Strikes Back. It took the first film, Star Wars, that was a huge success, a light-hearted, somewhat cheerful approach that was a take on the old space operas from the 1930s, like Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon. Star Wars really worked and was a perfect way to start the epic adventure. But Empire took what Star Wars had accomplished and made the world bigger, the characters more intimate, the visuals more impressive, and the story more darker, creating what many claim not only to be the best in the trilogy, but one of the greatest movies ever made. It opened in May the 21st, 1980, and took $6 million in its opening weekend. It however ended up taking $538 million in total, making it not quite as successful as Star Wars 3 years before, that took $775 million. The original cut of the film was 124 minutes long, but when the original cut came out it was lengthened to 127 minutes. The 124 minute cut was the edition that was shown across the world, so when the special edition came out, only 3 minutes of footage was added. The Empire Strikes Back was the first Star Wars film to be written by Lawrence Kasdan, who later went on to write films like Raiders of the Lost Ark and Return of the Jedi. He has also planned to write Star Wars Episode 7, which I'm very much looking forward to. The script for Empire provides us with some very funny scenes, but the script knows when to get dark. I prefer to use the term mature. Empire was also the first film to have a 5.1 surround sound mix, and when you turn Empire up to its full volume on your home system, you can really tell the difference. It sounds terrific. The Empire Strikes Back later went on to win the Oscar for Best Sound at the Academy Awards in 1981, and that's the only Oscar it went home with, comparing to 3 years before when Star Wars took home a whopping 6 Academy Awards. John Williams returns to score, giving us yet another superb soundtrack, and of course introducing us to arguably the best and most iconic theme ever written, the Imperial March. You cannot escape this theme, and whenever you hear it, you know Vader's coming. How John Williams didn't win the Oscar for Best Score that year is beyond me, and it's in my opinion superior to Michael Gore's score for Fame that took the Golden Statue home that year. Irvin Kershner directed The Empire Strikes Back, but you can tell George Lucas had a lot of creative control. Kershner is definitely known for having a dark approach to films, especially sequels with films such as RoboCop 2 in his filmography. Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, Harrison Ford all returned to star in the lead roles, as well as the introduction to some new characters like Lando, played by Millie D. Williams. Characters like Boba Fett and the Emperor are also introduced to us for the first time in Empire, as well as the first ever time we see Yoda on the big screen. Yoda is still a character that is loved worldwide, and it's a shame his character was messed around with in the prequels, but I pretend those films never happened. He is a lovable green thing that is played very well by Frank Oz. The puppetry is very clever, and although it does look a little bit off now, it's still better than CGI and has a lot of charm to it. I've just watched this film again, and when I first saw Yoda when watching The Empire Strikes Back, I was really struck by how different he looks from in the newer movies. Obviously he's completely computer generated in the new movies, but here in episode 5 he just looks like a Muppet. Even so, I would like to express my opinion that Yoda is a more realistic and more interesting character here as a Muppet rather than in the newer movies where he's a computer generated image. At least here in the newer movies, you know he's actually there and he's not just added in the film later. The scenes with Luke and Yoda in Dagobah are some of my favourites in the whole movie. The Empire Strikes Back is also home to some of the most thrilling battle sequences of the entire Star Wars series, and that includes the prequels. The battle scene where the rebels fight the Imperial walkers on the ice planet is an incredibly well made battle sequence, not only in the way that it was put together so convincingly using models, but that the machines themselves are so creatively made. The Imperial walkers are some of the most recognisable machines from the entire Star Wars saga, right up there with the Millennium Falcon and the Death Star. Easily the best of the trilogy, The Empire Strikes Back has so much going for it. A wonderful plot, an equally good script with some brilliant lines, and special effects to match the first film. This film is a glaring example of why people love the original trilogy so much. Since George Lucas passed on the major responsibilities for this film, we are given a more professional, well-made film for our attention, and Lucas's vision is better off for it. With its recent remastering, it's the only film in the trilogy not to be damaged by Lucas's tampering. Extra images are added, and graphics are slightly changed, but nothing major is altered, and as a result the film appears to us as no different from its original self, just cleaned up more. Darker and more mature as well, this sequel is better than the original Star Wars because it's not so black and white. ILM's visual effects are outstanding and rightly won the Academy Award for Star Wars. The crew returned, including Oscar-winning veteran Richard Udland working with British effects supervisor Brian Johnson, who had just won the Oscar for Alien, effects photographer Dennis Moran, who had become an Academy Award and visual effects pioneer for ILM for E.T., Return of the Jedi, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Inner Space, The Abyss, Terminator 2 and Jurassic Park, and compositor Bruce Nicholson, who would go on to win an Oscar for his work on Raiders of the Lost Ark and work on a wide variety of films in Hollywood. George Lucas took a strong interest and influence in the special effects, and also had to take credit for some of the excellent sequences in the film, which would also help drive the story along. Again, like Star Wars, the sound work was first rate and Oscar winning. In most cases the sound had to be recorded in a studio and added many months later after filming had been completed. Sound re-recordist Bill Varney would also win an Oscar for Raiders of the Lost Ark. Steve Maslow and Greg Landecker would also worked as sound re-recordists and were both prolific contributors to many high-profile movies. They would also go on to win Oscars for their work on Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then some 14 years later win again for their work on Keanu Reeves' hit movie Speed. Peter Sutton won for his work on set and has a large body of work in film since this movie. Also, credit has to go to Ben Burtt's sound design, which creates a fabulous soundscape for the film. He also created the classic Vader breathing sound. The centrepiece of the film is the epic showdown between Luke and Vader with that massive revolution, which ranks as one of cinema's all-time memorable moments. And it's a great sequence, from Vader's sobering welcome, "The Force is with you, young Skywalker, but you are not a Jedi yet," to the almost surreal climax. The forces of darkness loom large at every turn of the turning point in the film. You get that feeling that the rebels are just slightly out their depth. There is an underlying menace at work that heightens the dramatic tension. Vader is never as beautifully evil as his Empire. We finally see why he is Emperor Side, the top dog in the galaxy, and as he lays waste to his own generals in ruthless fashion. We get some great new characters. Han's old buddy Lando, as I said, played by Billy D. Williams, and he is this sort of slimy administrator of Cloud City who finds himself in a no-win situation. And there's the legendary Boba Fett, who I also mentioned, the bounty hunter with balls of steel. The outfit's so cool, it instantly establishes him as the Star Wars icon. And of course the Emperor, who, we can't really decide, I mean, there's one of the Star Wars changes, special edition changes, the sort of ugly sort of head, but then, with the new one we get the remaster, the one from the prequels and Return of the Jedi. So yeah, we get to see the Emperor, but it just depends on which one you prefer. Personally, I do actually prefer the special edition one, as it just keeps continuity, and I just think it looks better, and it's just confusing to see a completely different looking Emperor to the one in Return of the Jedi. But that's just me. I know a lot of people prefer the other one. Some of the dialogue in Star Wars, you know, sort of strays into Cheeseland, but the pace is just it's never interrupted, and it's, you know, it sort of adds to the part of the charm of the film, and just reminds you of classic 80s movies. But all in all, the sum of its parts adds up to a supremely effective, tightly woven sci-fi drama, the most deliciously dark of all the Star Wars movies and the most mature, classic entertainment stuck in a time capsule of its own. The Empire Strikes Back remains an extremely powerful and well-made installment into the Star Wars series, not taking even a single step backwards in the sheer breathtaking adventure of the original film. It's not often that a film as good as Star Wars can be released and then followed up with a sequel that is just as great, if not better. Star Wars was a gigantic film upon its release, and with The Empire Strikes Back, Lucas has begun the formation of one of the greatest film series in cinematic history.
The Star Wars saga continues with a special limited engagement of The Empire Strikes Back, starting November 19th. Empire Strikes Back, returning to your galaxy November 19th.